Cool. Yes, my people. Welcome back to another episode of the Where's My Podcast. Today, we're joined by a very special guest. Someone that I personally didn't even know we could get on the podcast, but obviously that's testament to his humility. But today, guys, we're joined by Odunayo Ojo, the founder of the Fashion Archive magazine, journalist, YouTuber. Hey, the list is endless. But anyway, Odunayo, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
How was the?
I don't mind coming on, like what you said. Yeah, it's cool.
Sorry, but obviously, do you know what it is? Because as I said, bro, like when you're starting something up and whatnot, and you see someone that's been doing their thing for X amount of years and they've managed to amass a certain audience, you feel like you kind of need to show them something before they kind of buy into your thing. Do you know what I mean? But you obviously reached out to us first.
Yeah.
Which was sick, man. What made you reach out?
Honestly, when I see people doing interesting things, I just want to support it. It's not really about followers or audience or things like that for me, to be honest.
Yeah.
I know some people do it, but I'm not really like that
You're
personally.
into that.
Yeah.
You're purist.
Yeah.
Cool. So do you know what, yeah? With every episode, I basically kind of start the episode by speaking about why I kind of wanted the guest on the podcast. And with you, there's so many reasons. A lot of reasons. One of the first reasons is basically the fact that, one, you obviously do fashion YouTube. Well, you're like, I don't even know whether to call you a fashion. Do you know what I mean? I
don't mind what people call me. I do a lot of things.
You do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like, I want to call you a fashion YouTuber, but the reason why it's difficult to call you that because you don't. What you do, I had never seen before. Prior to coming across your channel, like the fashion YouTubers I saw would do like vlogs and just, you know,
outfit videos.
Do you know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. Whereas you're in a completely different lane where you're really teaching people about fashion. And for someone like me, who'd obviously started up the platform along with these guys, who needed to learn a lot about the fashion industry, seeing your channel was like, oh my God, this is a godsend. Do you know what I mean? Like, rather than me having to kind of go on the internet and search up for so many things, man can watch one of your 10-minute videos and learn like the stuff that I need to know to you know, excel my learning. So that's definitely one of the reasons. Another one of the reasons which I really want to delve into today is from seeing your videos and just seeing how you are, I've seen that you have built up a crazy amount of knowledge and you have a solid opinion on certain things. You know what I mean? Your opinion is worth something. There's value in it. And being a brand, a platform that wants to help up and coming designers and anyone trying to get into the fashion industry, I think you're sort of the perfect person to get on and for people to listen to. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm happy that
kind words.
Yeah. No, man, honestly, I have to keep it real, man. Like, bruv, I could go on forever about why I'm so happy and grateful that you're here, and I just hope that this conversation does what I want it to, and I think it will. But sorry for babbling on. First off, I just want to start with a simple question, like, how did you kind of get into the whole fashion thing? Because like, when someone's not a designer, it's interesting seeing what actually made them intrigued about fashion. Do you know what I mean?
Right. All right. So for me, I think I was always into fashion, but when I really got into it, like studying it and stuff, was sixth form. So I met these two guys, one guy called George Vickery, another guy called Toby Roberts. So when I met them, they were like into brands like Rick Owens. I know George Vickery used to wear Off-White, but that was when Off-White first started. Like no one knew what Off-White was. Like no one actually knew what it was.
How did he know?
I don't even know, to be honest. And I was kind of into fashion. And I heard about like Yohji Yamamoto, those kind of brands. But then I was kind of intrigued, and the way they dressed was like different to everyone else. And I was like, yeah, these guys like actually dress different. So I started learning about the brands and I kind of got obsessed with it. And then when you get obsessed with it, like reading about it, learning about it, you're kind of like, okay, I want to work in fashion. Like, how do I work in fashion? And I kind of stumbled across it by mistake. So I always tell people like my whole thing in fashion is by mistake. So I was doing this job where I'd help move people's furniture. Yeah. So I was kind of like I don't know what like a mover. I don't know what you call it. Like I was taking people's furniture, I'll put it in a van. Okay. And then move it to
did this have anything to do with fashion though?
It did. Well, I'll get to it. So this woman, I moved her furniture from London to France because she was moving to France. So I went to her house, took her furniture, put it in a van, drove to France, dropped it off at France. And then I saw her face on a magazine. And I was like, and I think it was like a big magazine. So I was like, wait, are you a fashion designer or something? She was like, yeah, I have a fashion brand. I was like, oh, cool. And because then, even though I hadn't worked in fashion, I studied it for a long time. So when I was talking to her, I was like, we started talking about fashion. And before I knew it, like I'd stopped doing. I was supposed to be like putting her beds in her room,
Yeah.
but we were just talking about fashion for so long. She enjoyed the conversation, I guess, and she was like, "You know what? Let's go for dinner." So then we went for dinner in France that same day, and then by the end of the day, she was like, "Oh, are you looking to work in fashion?" I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "Okay, cool. I've been looking for an intern. It's a paid opportunity. If you can start from tomorrow, then calm." So I quit my job like immediately. That was the end of that job. And then I started working for her, and that's honestly how I got into fashion.
What were you doing? What job were you doing at the time? Was it a fashion?
No, so the job I was doing was that
handy
job. Yeah, I was literally moving people's furniture. Yeah.
Oh my days. Stories like that are so obviously I've done so much research. I'd heard the story before. But hearing it from you in person is interesting as well. I wanted to ask a question about your sort of journey with fashion from before that. Because obviously you got asked that question, like why you wanted to work in fashion. Prior to meeting the gentleman you mentioned before, you know, the guys that wear clothes and stuff like that. Yeah. Like in your upbringing or, you know, your childhood, was there anything that kind of drew you to fashion before that?
Yeah. So basically, I think I told you, like off camera, that I moved to Nigeria at one point.
Yeah.
So I went to Nigeria, and when I went to Nigeria, I feel like Nigeria is kind of more fashion forward than London in some ways, because I think you're allowed to explore your style. Like when I lived in London, like you just wear Air Force Ones and tracksuits, and if you don't, people are like, bro, what are you wearing? Like, what are you actually wearing?
So let me cut you there, Ayo. Yeah. Why did you feel those constraints?
I don't actually know. It was just growing up in London, you just feel like you have to wear that, and if you don't, then there's something wrong with you. So when I went to Nigeria, people are a lot broader with their styles. People wear like loud print, some people wear like dark colors, everyone wears whatever they want. So in Nigeria, I was able to explore my style. And then also when I was in Nigeria is more influenced by America than it is London. So I remember when jerkin was big in America, and people were wearing all these mad things like skinny jeans and studded belts and shutter shades and all that. So I'd wear stuff like that, but I'll come back to London and remember, this stuff is big in America, it's not big in London. So I come back, people are like, bro, like, what are you wearing? Like, bro, you look stupid. So the thing is, I started getting used to like dressing different and being into that. So I think when I got used to that, that's kind of when I really got into fashion, because then I was just like into anything. Because at that point, now I'm at a point where my friends don't even say anything about, because for so long I've dressed different. They're just like, you know what, that's just him. Yeah. So I've kind of grown out of it, and then I was able to just learn more about fashion, explore fashion, and do what I wanted.
So that was definitely like your opening point into fashion.
So I'll say it was actually Nigeria. I didn't really explore it till I went there.
That's so interesting, because obviously you weren't there for that. But why were you there, if you don't mind me asking?
That's a long story. do you know, I can tell you. Okay, so basically, the story is, so when I was in school in London, I got into a fight with this guy. I won't forget his name, Frankie, right? So I don't know why this guy tried to bully me. So I took his head and slammed it into my knee, and then his lips split open, and he had to get surgery to get it sewn together. So basically what happened was, I don't know what's wrong with my school, but they called a psychiatrist because they said that this guy's always fighting, there's something wrong with him. So this Indian woman was the psychiatrist, and she came to the school, and she took me and my parents to the side after she had like examined me, and she was like, you know what, there's clearly nothing wrong with your son, but the problem is, if like it's on his record that a psychiatrist has seen him, he's going to have like, on my record, it's going to be like, oh, he has mental health issues and stuff like that. And that can affect jobs in the future. Everything. So my parents were like, okay, I might have to go like out of the country so it cools down and then come back. So that was actually why I went to Nigeria. That's quite deep.
Yeah, that is deep. Sorry, the podcast took a deep turn. No, but obviously that's mad interesting, because having gone to Nigeria for that reason, like no part of you would have thought to yourself, wow, like I'm going to come back with a newfound love of fashion and style. Do you know what I mean? And I'm actually happy you mentioned something like that, because when it comes to Africa, a continent that's so rich in culture, with fashion obviously being part of that, no one really mentions, like, no, until now anyway, no one really discusses how important African style kind of is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and the thing is, like, also when I was going to Nigeria, I thought I'd hate it, because it was like, you're going to Africa, you're going to Nigeria. Actually, it was the best time of my life. Honestly, it was so fun. Partially, part of it was because I was from London. Because what happens is, when you sound English in Nigeria,
you're cool.
All the rich kids are just like, yeah, he's cool, he's from London. So then I get stuck into like all the rich kids, and these are kids that like we go on, like I used to go on their yachts, and they have mansions, and they
What
have
was
like
that place
pool
called again?
parties.
Banana Island or something?
Well,
like
that was a place in Lagos. That's in Victoria Island.
Yeah.
That was a place that some people own houses as well. So you'll go pool parties, crazy cars, like crazy lifestyle, quad biking, surfing. Like it was crazy. Nigeria was way better than I expected. Like it was so much better than I expected.
And speaking of those people that you mentioned, were these the people that would have been like the jerk boys, or would they have, because they were rich or whatever, what was their style like?
Their style was kind of similar. So I feel like Nigeria kind of has its own trends, which is influenced slightly by London and mainly by America, and then Nigerian fashion as well. So there's been trends in Nigeria. So there was that whole jerk thing. There was a time when like everyone had to wear Vans. The time when it was like Converse, like you had to wear Converse with like baggy jeans, or you were just dumb. So Nigeria kind of has its own like styles as well and trends.
Yeah. We could actually have a whole nother conversation on African fashion, but let me bring it back to you. So, okay, cool. Now that kind of explains where the kind of love for fashion came from. So let's go straight back to the internship now. What was that like, and like what were the things that you learned?
So I normally say that most of the things, like my foundation in fashion, was from that internship, because I knew about fashion in terms of, I've read about designers, the history of fashion, but you don't really know how things work till you work in the industry. And that internship, I did everything, which was a good thing. So I did everything from literally getting coffee for my boss to doing supply. So I'd go and find out where the button suppliers are and get buttons for the store, or like zips. And it didn't occur to me then that like you have to even buy zips, you have to buy buttons, like you need a supplier for like tiny things, lining, stuff like that. I just thought, you just get a fabric, you sew it, that's a jacket. But even the tiniest things, like if you want to get custom buttons made, like you have to get a supplier for that. So I started learning about all the different elements, and also what I did learn when I was doing that was where the suppliers actually are. Because now if I want to start a brand, I know exactly where to go. If I want to get buttons, if I want to get fabrics, because when I was interning, she would take me to all these places to like see, okay, this is where you get your jackets from. And I remember there was one time where we were making a jacket for the head of the Navy. And I didn't know that Navy officers actually have gold on their buttons. So I had to go to Savile Row. And that was a new experience, because like Savile Row, someone like me from where I come from, I'm not going to be anywhere near Savile Row. And I remember even when I walked in, like the security saw me. They're like, what's this guy doing here? And I remember I had to get these gold buttons. And then I remember walking back to the studio thinking, if I get robbed, like I'm in serious trouble.
How much were they worth?
I don't know, but it was a lot.
It was a lot.
It was a lot.
What was this for? One
jacket.
Oh, okay, so he just wanted a custom made jacket from.
I think that's how Navy officers.
That's how
they differentiate like ranks.
Okay.
Within like the Army, the Navy, stuff like that.
Okay.
So it's crazy. But so I did stuff like that. Another big thing that I learned was I didn't know what a pattern was before I did my internship. So I remember the first thing she asked me, she was like, "Do you know what a pattern is?" I was like, "Nah, I don't know what a pattern is." And she sat me down, taught me what a pattern was, and the first job I did actually was arranging the patterns. And for people who don't know what a pattern is, like a pattern is basically what you use to cut fabric.
Okay, so it's that thing that they draw that.
Yeah, so clothing is joined together by seams. So like that t-shirt you're wearing, there's a seam there, you can see it. Yeah. So a pattern would be like all the flat bits. So then you just cut it around, and then so that pattern for example would have maybe like 5 bits. So the front panel, the back panel, the neck, and you have to cut those bits separately, and then when you have all those different fabrics you sew them together. So all that stuff I didn't know until I did my internship, and then I started to learn all that stuff. And I also got to go to like different fashion shows.
Which ones did you go to?
So I went to a Balenciaga show.
Wow.
Because one of our tailors worked at Balenciaga, so he came into the office one day and was like, "Oh, I have invites. Who wants to come?" I was like, "Yeah, definitely coming." So I went to a Balenciaga show. I hosted a show at the Saatchi Gallery in London for the brand. So honestly, I learned everything on that internship, and I did it for 2 summers in a row, and that was a good foundation in terms of working in fashion.
That sounds like some real hands-on experience.
Yeah, it was.
So obviously, I suppose being in an environment like that with someone that loves fashion, like you obviously did, you would have maybe have gotten that urge to like become a designer yourself. Did that ever happen?
Yeah, so I wanted to be a designer for a really long time, but I think the longer I worked in fashion, the more I realized, because like you said, I'm kind of a purist, and I realized that am I really good enough to be like the designer that I would want to be? And I realized that I don't really have the patience to like really learn how to make patterns to the level I'd want to, or how to sew to a level I want to. So I was just like, I'll leave that alone. I'll leave that to the people that are actually good at that. So then I was thinking of, okay, what am I actually good at? What do I like? So I know I like reading about fashion. I know I like fashion. I know I have a lot of knowledge about it because I've worked in it. So then I was like, yeah, the best thing to be is to be a journalist. So that's when I changed, kind of like switched careers from wanting to become a designer to a journalist. And then now I study, obviously, fashion journalism at uni. And like I started the YouTube channel as well as a way to kind of be a fashion journalist.
Hey, you know, you're literally doing the interview for me. Like, like the answers, I'm literally thinking of a question that you're just answering. But like, that's interesting that you kind of made that transition from like wanting to be a designer to wanting to be a journalist, because that's literally like two opposite ends of like the fashion spectrum. Because I was listening to one of your videos today, or I think it was the podcast you were on, and you were obviously speaking about how important fashion journalism is and how important their opinions are to actual designers. Like, do you think having wanted to be a designer has made you better, has made you a better fashion journalist?
I think, okay, partially wanting to be a designer, but I think also actually knowing how to design, because I've done it myself. I think it's different to be a journalist saying, like, some guys say, oh, that t-shirt's garbage. It's like, how can you even talk about a t-shirt being garbage? You don't even know how to make one. So it's like, because I've done design, I feel like it gives me an understanding of like how hard something is to make. Like I can see a jacket and know like, yeah, that is crazy, because I know like the pattern they've used to make it is insane. The sewing would have taken forever. So that gives me an appreciation of like certain clothing, and it makes me able to differentiate like something that's really, really good from something that's really, really bad. So I'd say partially it's wanting to be a designer, but it's also actually designing clothes and making clothes.
I understand. The point you're making is so important, I think, especially in a field like fashion, because in today's day and age, because everybody has an opinion, but it's like, whose opinion should you actually value? Do you know what I mean? And I think this is kind of a good segue to speak about the YouTube channel, because that's obviously a medium that you also use to put your opinion across. So what were the reasons why you decided to start a YouTube channel?
Yeah, so honestly, when I started my YouTube channel, that was around the time I was thinking, okay, I want to be a fashion journalist. And I used to always watch like fashion YouTube, but the YouTubers then were like, some of them I'm friends with now, like Sanjeev, Magnus Ronning, Unknown Vlogs, those kind of guys. And they used to do like vlogs, styling videos. And I always thought the type of videos that I would make, I don't see anyone making it. Like talking about fashion history, talking about, okay, this is how this brand made money. Or talking about, okay, this is like, this designer is really good because of these reasons. Like, because I know there's many designers, like I made videos about like Vivienne Westwood, for example. People hear these names, but they're like, I don't get it. Like, okay, yeah, Vivienne Westwood, they're respected, but why? So I wanted to make videos explaining that. And when I used to watch YouTube, I didn't see those videos. So then I came up with the idea, okay, I'll just fill the gap. So then I started making those type of videos, like fashion history, analyzing runway shows, that sort of stuff. But I think now there's a few more people that do it, which is a good thing.
So after you, do you feel like you definitely were one of the people that kind of started this whole type of fashion?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, 100% I agree with you, because as I said, in starting what we're doing at Where's My TV, I needed to see someone like you, and it was hard to find because you were like the only person doing it. Do you know what I mean? When you first started, because I've watched your first video today, and you started by doing like vlogs and stuff.
Partially, yeah. So I did some vlogs. And
you just decided that's not the sort of content I want to make.
Yeah. So the thing is, I actually want to start vlogging again. But the thing is, like, stuff has to happen for me to vlog. I don't want to force it. So like, I'm going to Belgium to do some like fashion stuff next month. So when I go to Belgium, that'll be easy to vlog because I'm actually going for something.
Of course.
But in London, like day to day, it doesn't make sense. Like, where am I actually going to be vlogging all the time? So
there's not enough going on.
Yeah.
Cool. I would want to see some of your vlogs, by the way. Yeah, that would be sick. And so you obviously were doing the vlogs and stuff before, and then you moved into the research videos and whatnot. How much research actually goes into those videos? Because it seems like obviously you have to, for YouTube purposes, you condense them into like a 10-minute, 15-minute sort of length. Like, how much research actually goes into those videos?
Yeah, honestly, it depends on the video. But if I'm doing like a fashion history video, analysing like a designer's career or something, that takes forever. It takes like maybe 2-3 weeks. Because what I have to do is I have to find if there are any books about the designer, buy all the books, read all the books, get all the information together, and then see the articles, see what interviews they've done. If they've done podcasts, I have to listen to them to get all the information in one place. And then when I have that, it comes down to, okay, what do I actually want to say? Because there's so much information. If I'd say all of it, the video would be hours. So I have to then decide, okay, people want to hear that, people don't really care about that. And then eventually that's how I get to like a 10-15 minute video. So yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, no, that's why I rate you so highly, man. Because even though you put it into those 10-15 minutes, the reason I asked that question is because I wanted to give you the opportunity to show people what actually goes into videos like that. Because obviously, with fashion YouTube in general, most of the content is, you know, styling videos and whatnot. And not to say those are easy to make, because YouTube isn't easy in general, but there's levels in terms of difficulty, and you're at like the more difficult end of the spectrum, if that makes sense. And that's something I highly respect.
I mean, you don't have to do that much work to make a style. You just buy the clothes and then wear it, and then it's not that difficult, to be fair. It's like not that hard, but yeah. I'm not trying to diss anyone, but yeah.
But that's the reality though. Do you know what I mean? No, that's literally just why I wanted to say that. Obviously, still speaking on YouTube, your name is obviously, you know, so funny, yeah. I was watching your video today, with my missus was just next to me as I was watching it, innit? And she was like, "Oh, is this the person you're interviewing today?" I was like, "Yeah, the Fashion Roadman." She was like, "It doesn't sound like a roadman though." So like, how did you come up with the name? Was the name meant to be like almost like a juxtaposition on purpose?
Yeah. It's just a joke.
Oh, okay.
So basically, because like I grew up in Lewisham, but obviously I don't sound like that anymore because I went to a school, I told you, like my sixth form, all white people, where they talk like, that. So you don't even realise, but you end up, because I remember when I first went to that school, people didn't even understand what I said.
What did you sound like before?
Normal. It was just London. They were just, it was almost like they didn't understand what I was saying. They're like, what did you say? So then eventually I actually had to change the way I spoke, just so they would understand what I was saying, which is actually crazy because we're speaking English. But you don't realise that you eventually start talking like that, like naturally. So the whole Fashion Roadman name it's just a joke because I'm someone that grew up in Lewisham, and where I'm from, no one talks about fashion the way I talk about it. So it's just kind of like a joke, like I'm from Lewisham, but I'm into fashion this much. And it's also a thing, because I remember when I made the name, people said, you want to have a name that people always remember. And if it was just my normal name, I don't think it's that memorable. But when you hear like Fashion Roadman, some people might find it funny, but people will remember it.
Yeah. Your friends in your area, like, what was their sort of response to your YouTube channel?
I think by the time I made it, they kind of knew.
Okay.
Like, because I was always the guy that dressed different. I was always into fashion. Yeah. Even it got to the point now where like people, because sneakers became a big thing, and I was into sneakers a long time ago, like the whole Yeezys before it got popular. So when people started knowing what Yeezys were and stuff, they would come to me to be like, oh, how do I actually get these? Like, where do I? So it got to a point where it was actually cool to be the person that was different. So by the time I made my YouTube channel, it wasn't like people were like, oh yeah, he's just making fashion content. It wasn't really
suppose it would have been something they may have even wanted, considering you were known for that, being that guy. Yeah. People would have actually wanted to see content like that.
Yeah.
But do you know what I also find interesting, Ayo, yeah? The type of designers you sort of resonate with. Because I'm wearing Comme des Garçons today. I wore them on purpose just for you. Because you speak about, I can't pronounce her name, sorry, Ray
Kawakubo.
You speak about her so much, like, why? And you speak about Vivienne Westwood, you speak about Oswald Boateng, you speak about
a lot of designers,
like, but why is there certain ones in particular that you seem to like more than others?
Because they're just better than others, to be fair. It's like, so to me, I think the best designer I know of personally is Alexander McQueen. And that's because he has every skill that a designer could possibly have. So Alexander McQueen, he went to Savile Row. He got trained at Savile Row. So he knows how to make a suit perfectly. Like, he learnt at the best place. He learnt to make patterns. He went to Italy, learnt to make patterns even more.
Who did he learn with in Italy?
Many different people.
Okay.
Well, I could get into it, but it'll be quite a long So many different people came back to London, worked in a store. So then he learnt the commercial side. Then he went to Central St. Martin's, which is best fashion school. Then he learnt there. And then he also, even in terms of like understanding and knowledge, because a lot of designers, what they do is like they try to appear intelligent. So they'll be like, oh, this collection, like they try to make things deeper than it is. So they'll be like, okay, this collection is inspired by this time period, like Edwardian England or whatever. And you look at the clothing and you're like, you're actually just talking rubbish. Like I can tell. I've read about that period. So Alexander McQueen, he used to go to the V&A, I think every week, like to the museum.
So what is the V&A? Oh, it's a museum.
Yeah. Victoria and Albert. So he like used to do a lot of research, and his mum as well was a history teacher. So everything about him was just well researched. He learned all the skills. So when it came to making clothing, that's why the clothing was so good. That's why it was so well made. A lot of designers even now, they can't actually make clothing themselves. They're like creative directors. So they have people that sew, and they just have an idea and they try to get people to
How do you feel about
make
that?
it. I'm in two minds about it. It's like you can be a good creative director and do that, but the problem is like you have limitations. Like someone like McQueen can make anything he wants himself. So if he has an idea, he can make it. If someone who can't make clothing has an idea, you can try to make it, but someone might tell you, we can't actually make patterns like that. Even maybe they could, they're just being lazy or they're not good enough. And they obviously don't want you to go to someone else because they want that money. They want you to pay them. So they'll be like, we can't do that. We can. So it always limits you. If you can't make clothing and you start a brand, it always limits you. Which is why I personally feel like, not that people that can't make clothes are bad, but there's something better about designers that can. Because it puts them at a better, like at an advantage. They can actually make the clothes. So any idea they have is going to become a reality, basically.
And those tend to be the designers that you resonate
like
with.
The Ray Kalkubas, the Oswald Boatengs, the Vivian Westwoods. All these people make clothing themselves.
Yeah, that's so sick because that makes sense. Because obviously when I was watching your videos and I hear all the designers, like, but I could tell which ones you liked more. I couldn't work out why these were better. Because obviously for someone that hasn't researched as much as you, not to say a designer is just a designer. I don't want to like disrespect the art of fashion designing, but all designers are like lumped into a box in my head. Whereas because you're such a purist and you've researched it so much, you've segmented different types of designers. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you've got Jack Moose in one sort of box. And
Jack Moose is like, I know he's like popular and stuff.
You know, I said that name on purpose, didn't it?
Yeah. Jack Moose, I think there's like tiers of designers. Obviously, like people might disagree because people like Jack Moose and stuff, but Jack Moose is not like Jack Moose. There's like levels to design. Jack Moose makes good clothing, like beautiful clothing, but that's about as far as it goes. He's not really, really trying hard. Like when someone makes really commercial clothing, I feel like that's easy. That's like the easy way out, because if I make a dress that everyone can wear, it's really easy. There's no inspiration point. It's just like too easy. I have more respect for designers that can take something really abstract and get people to wear it. Like someone like Rick Owens is crazy to me, because Rick Owens makes mad stuff, but he still gets normal people to wear it. Like people who would look at avant-garde clothing, like the clothing that Comme des Garçons makes, and like, oh, that's weird, but they'll wear Rick Owens, which is like, I feel like that's more commendable.
So speaking of all these sort of designers and brands, obviously we're at a time in streetwear where we're coming to a place where luxury and streetwear are kind of merging, and obviously hasn't always been like that. When do you feel like the sort of luxury streetwear space kind of started?
Well, it's come in different waves. The first wave was like Dapper Dan, when he was bootlegging Louis Vuitton and Gucci and stuff, and rappers were wearing it, and then Louis Vuitton copied Dapper Dan and stuff. There was that whole thing, and then it wasn't really a thing. And then Virgil Abloh, I think, really brought it back. So he had the group Bin Trill, and they were making like t-shirts. He was printing on like Ralph polos and stuff, and then he made Off-White. And before then, there were like brands who would make hoodies and stuff, but it wasn't at that sort of price point, because there are brands like Fubu. There was Rockaware, which were big in like the urban scene, but they weren't selling jackets for £1,000. So Off-White was the first one to tell you that, I'm making a hoodie and I can sell it for 500 and people are still going to buy it. And I think other luxury brands realized this is so much easier than what we're doing. Like we could just make a hoodie, put our name on it, and because it has heritage, like Balenciaga does it now, because there's heritage, people are going to buy into it just because of our name. And I think that's when because of people like Virgil Abloh, the whole industry kind of steered in that direction.
How do you feel about that? And the reason I ask that is because, as we've been speaking, you're purist. Do you know what I'm saying? And from the way you kind of told me that sort of luxury streetwear story, it kind of sounds like, I don't want to call it a cop-out because that's not fair, but it kind of sounds like it's been remixed in a way where you can kind of miss out steps. Do you know what I mean? Like, not to downplay Virgil Abloh's ability to design, because obviously he's a sick designer, but is someone like him comparable to the Comme des Garçons lady? Do you know what I mean?
No, he's not. But the thing about Virgil is I really like him, and I think especially at Louis Vuitton, what he's doing now, his work is really, really good, especially the last 2 collections. But I think a lot of people forget how, like, a lot of these designers that are successful actually did a lot of work. So even Virgil Abloh, for example,
He did a lot of work.
he worked for Kanye West. He interned at Fendi. He didn't just wake up and become a successful designer. So the problem is, like, a lot of people see Virgil Abloh, they see the hoodies that he makes, they see Off-White, and they think, okay, cool, I'm just going to make hoodies and print on a t-shirt and think it's going to work. And that's why it doesn't. Because it's like, no, this guy actually built a network for years. And he was friends with Kanye. Like, how many people are going to have someone that famous who's going to endorse your stuff? And then he worked at Fendi. So this is not some guy that just woke up from his bed and then made hoodies and printed on it. Even the prints that he's making, they have like some cultural references that people that were around him in Chicago and stuff, they understand. So it's not just some random thing. And I think that is the issue with that whole, like, fashion going in that direction, because I think before that whole thing, people had a better understanding of what it took to be like a designer and the skills you had to have. But now people have this idea in their head, this strange idea that, I'm just going to make a t-shirt brand and it's going to blow. And that's why most people fail, because they don't see the other stuff that goes into it. Like, anyone who has a successful, what people would think is a t-shirt brand, like Jerry Lorenzo, I can go on and on about all the stuff he's done in fashion to get to the point he is. Like, no one just wakes up. Samuel Ross with A Cold War, he worked under Virgil Abloh, interned at other places, studied graphic design in school. So none of these people just become designers out of nowhere. And I think that's, if people take anything away from this, it should be that.
I'm so happy you're saying what you're saying now, yeah, because remember we were speaking about before how I wanted the conversation to go on, what I wanted us to talk, what I wanted our audience to get from you. For me, as you said, that is the sort of main thing. This isn't me trying to, like, put people down from starting brands and whatnot. Never. I want to encourage people to start brands and whatnot. But I think people need to be realistic about what a designer is and what it actually takes to succeed in the fashion business industry. Do you know what I mean? So this is obviously the perfect segue for me to kind of open the floor to you to just basically say what you think in today's day and age, what it takes to be successful in fashion.
Yeah. That's a bit of a hard question, because there are many different types of designers that can be successful.
I want us to talk about all of them.
That learn how to make clothing. Yeah. There's people that don't need to be fair. Like, there's brands like Tom Brown. I'm not sure if you've heard of Tom Brown.
I feel like I have.
Yeah, but he makes like suits and stuff, but he doesn't know how to make clothing.
So what's he doing then?
He just knows how to direct people. So he has the right team. So the thing is, if you can't make clothing, you still have to do a lot of research into making the right team and what that actually means. You have to learn what it means to be a good seamstress, or what it means to, that person is actually a good pattern maker. You have to know these things. Otherwise, like, people are just going to take your money and then do crap jobs. So that's really important. But I think people just need to think deeper about fashion. Like, people actually want to know there's an idea behind something. So if you make a hoodie and there's no meaning to it, it's like, okay, I can buy a million other hoodies where there's no meaning. So you have to actually have something about it has to make it different. Whether that's the inspiration, or it's the fabric, or it's the way you dye it. Maybe it's some dyeing process from Nigeria, and that's what makes it special. It's something, it has to be different. And all these brands that are successful, if you look deeply into it, there's something that makes it different. So even the most basic of things. So honestly, those are the things I'd say if you want to be a good designer. Obviously, there's other deeper things like the business of it, like knowing what a buyer is, knowing how to get buyers, knowing how to get your brands in front of the right people, knowing what your audience is and making sure that you stock in the right stores. Like, it's not just about stocking in any store. Some people, your brand might not work for Selfridges. So just because it's a big, like, store doesn't mean you actually have to be in there. Otherwise, it might actually affect your brand. So there's a lot of things I can get into, but That's like deep.
Do you know how long have we got, Gabs?
20 minutes.
Because I want to get into this.
Yeah,
I can't lie, because I'm learning a lot. Not to say I want to be a designer. I'm not saying that, but I'm learning a lot myself right now. So,
Yeah.
what sort of question can I ask off of that? So, what are the sort of brands you see right now, other than the Cold Walls and the Essential Jerry Lorenzo, Fear of God? Sorry, like in terms of like the UK, are there any brands you can see right now that have those sort of elements that you just spoke about?
There's a lot.
There's a lot, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, that's good
loads.
to know.
There's Maximilian. Who are off the top of my head? I'm trying to think of London brands.
Not even just London, sorry, you just UK.
Okay,
Yeah.
UK like Pierre Gosson, Maximilian. There's a lot of there's something called Fashion East, and it's like a talent incubator. Sorry, and people that are like up and coming designers, they apply to it, and if you get into it, they sort of fund you to go to London Fashion Week and stuff. And most times, the designers that are on that are always really, really good, and they become like next big things. So people from Fashion East have been people like Martine Rose.
Yeah.
I know Martine Rose. People like Craig Green. Those kind of people like Simone Rocha, like all these like big designers out of London, they all came through like Fashion East. So that's a good thing to look at. I think most people that are in Fashion East are probably on the level I'm talking about, to be honest, because even the fact you were accepted means you're at a certain level. Honestly, there's so many different brands, but I can go back to the whole point about like stocking in a store. So for example, if your brand is like more street leaning, like more essentials, then you'll probably want to be somewhere like Selfridges.
Because they've got that little section. What's it called? The play. Oh,
It's
I can't remember what
like,
it's called.
yeah, it's sort of like a street luxe sort of, yeah. But if your brand is more like avant-garde, if you stock in Selfridges, I don't feel like the type of people that shop in Selfridges go to buy avant-garde stuff. That's not the audience. So if your stuff is like a bit different, a bit outlandish, you probably want to stock somewhere like Dover Street Market or like the Lab Store or the Library, those type of places. If you're like street luxe, then you want to, like I said, Selfridges, like Harvey Nichols and stuff. So if you have an avant-garde brand and you manage to get a deal in Selfridges, it won't sell. I'm 100% sure that if you stock in Selfridges, especially if you're like an unknown brand, it won't sell. And most times when you're a young brand, this is also like getting into the business, the type of deals you sign with Selfridges are messed up. So they'll do like a sell or return deal. So normally when you're a big brand anyway, say Selfridges buy my clothing, they just buy it and then I forget about it. That's it. Then they have to sell it. It's on them to sell it. But when you're a young designer, because they're not sure if your clothing sells or not, because they don't have any data, they'll be like, okay, we'll buy your clothing, but if it doesn't sell in our store after a year, we'll sell it back to you for the same price you bought it. And it's in a contract. So if nothing sells, you're the one that loses money, because you're thinking, oh, I've sold my stuff for whatever amount of money, and then a year later, they haven't sold it. And then now you have this massive bill where they've returned like all your clothing. Which is why, as a young brand, you don't want to be stocking in stores that don't work. That's why it's important.
That sounds like a 360 deal. Like,
Yeah.
it's so important to know things like that. Like these little elements, from what you're saying, obviously they're so important to know. And to me, it's like, why don't people know this? Do you know what I mean? Why do you think people don't know this?
One is because people don't do their research, and two, it's just because like a lot of the like insider information you don't really know till you actually work in it, or unless you meet someone. Which is why I feel like it's good to always find mentors. Like if you want to start a brand, find someone who has one, because they'll have a lot of advice. Like all the stuff I know, they probably know as well if they have a brand, especially if it's like successful. So yeah, I think a lot of people just need to talk more, network more. Ask more questions before they do stuff.
It's interesting that when I asked you to kind of name the brands that you think have the elements that you're sort of discussing, you didn't mention any brands in like the luxe streetwear space, yeah? Do you feel like being in that space almost makes it harder for you to kind of do certain things?
Not really, because like, okay, so there's brands that I like the cultural thing around it. So like Cortez, you know Cortez, obviously.
Yeah.
There's Jehuko.
Okay, yeah.
So obviously you're wearing Nothing. Nothing is like one of those brands. I feel like Nothing though has stagnated a bit. It's almost like they're not evolving, and it's been so many years. I think Cortez is like evolving, especially in terms of like marketing. The way they market that brand is really, really good. Like the marketing, whoever's running it, I don't know if it's him himself, like Clint, or someone else, but whoever's in charge of marketing for Cortez is like really smart. So no, there's some brands that I like, but they're not like Cortez. I don't think is ever gonna, because it's at its core, it's like about the culture. So if they start stocking in like all these different stores, it's just gonna lose a bit of that element. So I feel like that's why it's not like I feel like there's anything wrong with those brands. I just feel like it's a different space.
Yeah. I fully hear that. And in terms of the point about nothing, like, it's so interesting because I remember when I first saw it, like, it stood out to me. Just obviously the name itself is obviously a bit different. At first you're thinking, wow, how can a brand be called Nothing? And then it's got the brackets and that. I'm like, no, this is sick. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I feel like only recently they've started to do a bit more stuff. Hopefully they can get to the place where I feel like they deserve to be.
Yeah.
But obviously we never know. But I'm like, everything you're saying, I'm so happy that I've got you on here because you're giving your honest opinion about stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you feel like for a brand like Cortez, for example, it's their marketing that's kind of led them to where they are?
Partially, but also just like the community around it because of like the people that associate with the brand. But I guess that's kind of like part of marketing, which is smart because once again, even that brand, what they do is not that different to a lot of brands because they still make stuff that a lot of people make. So how they've differentiated themselves is how they market, the image around it, who wears it, where they like associate themselves with, which is all to do with marketing. So that's what makes it different. That's why I said you have to always think of like what's going to make it different, because otherwise I can buy a sweatshirt and a hoodie from so many different people. So why am I going to buy it for you? Like if 50 people are selling a hoodie for £80, what's going to make me choose your stuff over everyone else? And that's like the important thing.
It most definitely is, yeah. And obviously when we're speaking off camera as well, I mentioned that I had watched your video about how luxury brands make money, and what that video kind of showed me is how important it is for designers to build their name. So like what sort of things go into that?
Yeah, I think it's the respect thing. So I think like even Balenciaga, for example, it's a good brand because it's like big now. A lot of people know what it is. It's built off a designer who was like a couturier, like a master tailor, who then died, and then some rich people bought the brand and then turned it into something else. But because it's still associated with a man who could create anything with fabric.
Was the man called Balenciaga?
Yeah, Cristobal Balenciaga, a Spanish tailor, sort of like couturier tailor. So a lot of these luxury brands are just living off the names of people that have died, and the people that design at the brands now are nowhere close to as good as the people that obviously started the brands, but that heritage is what they sell. So there's a guy, Bernard Arnault, you probably know who he is.
I've heard of, yeah.
So he owns this conglomerate called LVMH.
I had that in my head. I wanted to say it, but I was scared I might be wrong.
Yeah. So LVMH owns like Louis Vuitton, Givenchy, like loads of brands.
And now Off-White.
Dior. Right? No.
As in Virgil Abloh is just what?
New Guards Group owns Off-White, but they kind of bought it recently.
Okay.
Yeah. But essentially, they own a lot of brands. Now Off-White, actually, to be fair. And he's like responsible for like how fashion has changed, like making stuff really profitable. Because when he came in, he's like a French guy, so he likes fashion for the art, but he also he's like a businessman.
That's money.
Yeah, so he was trying to think of, okay, how can I make all these brands super profitable? And he's the one who really does like books on this about how he changed fashion. He's the one who really changed like how luxury fashion is. And that's where you get like, obviously he didn't start it, but he put it on another level. But things like the deals where you have like licensing your name and you start making perfume, and that's where the real money is. Like people think all these brands make most of their money from clothing. They don't. They make most of their money from like bags, from perfume, from like keychains, all this stuff. What's most important is building the name. Once you build a name, you start selling perfume. It's crazy because the profit margins, like when you make all these super expensive luxury jackets that like a Chanel will make, it actually costs a lot to make because these are like crazy stuff. They're not really making like the time, all the people they have to pay to make all that stuff, the time, even though they're selling it for 2,000, it's not really that, like when you factor everything in, they're not making that same money. But with the perfume, first of all, how many people can afford a jacket for 2,000? Not a lot of people, but a lot of people can afford like a Chanel perfume for £40, and people want that name, and it probably costs them like £3 max to make that perfume. So if they can sell 1 million perfumes at £40, and it costs them £3 to make, you're making way more money than some £2,000 jacket that you can only sell to 1,000 people. So that's why it's all about the name. Once you build the name, you can do anything, and you start making sunglasses and stuff like that. So, that's where the money is. Yeah.
So just to clarify, with like perfumes and sunglasses and that like designer ones, they're not making it. They're not even designing it. It's literally just their name on these print.
They're not. So sometimes they do.
Okay.
Some brands they do. Like Margiela actually was very involved in like making the perfume. But if we're talking about things like because there's like licensing deals, which is very common, especially with like sunglasses. So there's a company called Luxottica. So they will buy the license to make sunglasses on behalf of like Gucci or on behalf of Chanel. So all they'll do is they'll pay. There's different deals. It's either they pay you a flat fee, so they can pay you. Okay, we're gonna pay you $1 million, and when we pay you $1 million, we're just gonna do what we do and use your name to sell sunglasses. It might be a year long, or they'll be like, for every sale we make, you get like maybe 5%. So for luxury brands, they're not doing any work. That's good because you just take the name, only make sunglasses, and then we get 5% of all your sales. And sometimes in those contracts, there's things like you have to spend 10% of the profits on marketing the sunglasses, which is in the brand's best interest because you're marketing the brand and they're not the people that are spending it. You're the one who's spending it. So it's crazy money when it comes to like licensing and stuff like that. But you still, once again, have to be careful because if you license too many things out, your brand gets watered down. That's what happened to people like Michael Kors, Marc Jacobs, where it almost went to the point of like going into TK Maxx and
For
stuff.
real, everyone's got the MK watch.
Exactly.
Yeah. Damn, I can't honestly, there's so many things you told me today that I don't know how I didn't know because it seems so obvious in a weird way. Do you know what I mean? But I want to backtrack a bit, yeah, because you know how we're speaking about the importance of names. Like, obviously, you've got these massive fashion houses like LVMH and all of these ones, yeah. How much longer do you think they're gonna be at the top? Like, with the way fashion's changing and evolving, do you see an end?
Honestly, I don't, because they've been at the top for like a lot of them like
Centuries.
100 years. Like it's crazy. Like, so I don't think anything's going to change. And even when I just look at celebrities, like when I look at rappers, especially like in the UK, for example, the reason why they buy clothing is just to flex.
Status symbols.
And that because they've built a name to the point where it's all about status. And I think that's always going to be a thing. I don't see how that could die. I don't really see, because I feel like the rappers, they don't even care if it's worth it or not. They're just like, they're just like, I spent a bag on a t-shirt, so I have it like that. Like, I'm rich like that. I spent a bag on a t-shirt, so they don't really care. To them, it's just like flexing. I think to most people, it is that. That's why a lot of people aspire to like own an LV bag. Like a lot of women like really want to have an LV bag, stuff like that. So no, I don't think it's going anytime soon.
I find that nuts, because like, how can like. So what? For example, I was having this conversation with one of my friends, and I do feel like what we see as status symbols in terms of our generation is starting to change, particularly because of things like sustainability. So, for example, if you look in like the car industry, you have your Ferraris and your Lamborghinis. They're like the upper echelon of status symbol. But then now you've got like a Tesla.
Tesla, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So now that's become like the status symbol. It costs a lot of money, but it's also good for the environment.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking. Maybe in fashion, could something similar happen with like certain types of brands that are like eco-friendly? Could they eventually become like the status symbol within fashion?
I don't think so though. So Tesla is like one of those things where it's like not many people are going to be a Tesla. So like, for example, an LV, when everything goes sustainable, they have the most money. It's the biggest brand in fashion, so they're going to be able to afford to just switch everything up. So it's not like, if they see things going sustainable, they want to make money. It's a brand, so they're not going to like be like, yeah, we're just going to continue what we're doing. They're going to be more sustainable. Like even brands like Burberry, before, to keep their brand image, they used to burn like millions of product if it didn't sell, because they didn't want it to get into anyone's hands to water down the brand. And because that story came out, Now they can't do that, because if they do that, they're gonna get cancelled. People won't buy the brand. So now, if there's stuff left over, they like donate it to people and stuff like that. So they care. Like, they're gonna change. So that's why those brands are not gonna die when things change. Even in cars, like Tesla. Yes, there's a Tesla, but if you look at brands that are known for, and I know this because I'm like kind of into cars as well. So like Porsche, they have a Taycan. That's an electric car. They made that recently. They're working on other electric cars. Mercedes made an AQA. So that they have an electric car too. So all these brands, they're all shifting with the times. They're not just going to let like the times change and then their whole company is going to be redundant. Like they're not going to do that.
So in a weird way, it's like the bigger you are, the easier it is to kind of keep up with the times and evolve.
Yeah, exactly.
This is so interesting, bruv.
Because if you have all the money, like it doesn't matter where the industry goes. You just have the money to
just
transition.
switch things over. Yeah. In terms of, obviously, we keep talking about the luxury streetwear space, yeah. Like, how can I put this? Like, how does that sort of evolve? Because you, on your channel, you talk about sustainability a lot. Do you know what I mean? And with a lot of like the up and coming brands that I kind of see, particularly the luxury streetwear ones, like sustainability isn't like, it's not part of anything to do with them. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you feel like a lot more brands need to kind of think about, well, up and coming brands especially need to think about the sustainability aspect?
I don't really put it on like smaller brands, to be honest, because it's like even the amount of clothes they're making in the grand scheme of things, it's not even a lot to start with.
Yeah.
Like compared to H&M makes like millions of clothing a year and they waste millions a year. That's different to like someone's streetwear brand where they're making like max 1,000 pieces, max like every few months. So it's not really an issue. And I feel also we can't rely on like young brands to be the ones champion sustainability. Like, how much money do they have? We should be looking at the people that have millions
100%.
to change things. So they're the ones that actually have the money to make big changes in the industry. So no, I don't really put it on smaller brands. Okay. I put it on like bigger brands.
Cool. I hear that. Because the reason I ask that is because nowadays with like our generation of consumers and like Gen Z, it's like they're always looking for certain things that I feel like it's not fair for you to kind of put that expectations on certain brands. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's say someone has an up and coming brand or whatever, and they go into like a meeting with a retailer or something, and then that retailer might ask them, what's your sustainability spin? Like, how much are you donating to here? And like, I feel like that's unfair.
Yeah. It is unfair. And the thing is also, like, a lot of people on social media like do talk about sustainability a lot. But I feel like all of that stuff is just all like
virtue signaling.
Yeah, it's all virtue. Because when you think about it, brands like Shein are huge. So you can't tell me that people care about sustainability if everyone's buying Shein or like everyone's buying Pretty Little Thing and all those type of like Boohoo, for example. So like, I'd rather just people are just truthful with themselves. Like, there's no point saying on social media like, oh, I'll be sustainable, and then like Shein is like literally the most profitable brand like last year. Doesn't really make sense.
Cool. This is a bit of a tangent, but I think you're the perfect person to ask. And your response to this question, I feel like could help like designers as well. Obviously, you're a YouTuber. You've got a massive audience. And for me, I feel like it's a short space of time. Do you know what I mean? You've only had your channel for 3 years now.
Yeah.
And you managed to build an audience of nearly 75,000 subscribers. So congratulations on that. Like, what goes in to building an audience?
Honestly, I think it's just consistency. From what I've seen anyway on my YouTube channel, times when I didn't post frequently, my channel kind of just like slowed down. And then there was one time I think I saw other YouTubers who were posting every week and things were going really well. So I was like, okay, let me just actually commit, post every week. And I think I posted weekly for about 2 years. And that was when my channel like blew up. So in the first year, the whole year, I think I got to like 1,000 subscribers. But that was because I wasn't posting frequently. But after the next 2 years, I committed to like posting every week. And then I went from like 1,000 to like 20K the next year. And then next year I went from 20K to like now where I am, which is like 70K. So that's how quickly things went when I just started being consistent. So I think, honestly, the most important thing is consistency. And then obviously you actually have to do something different again, because it's like, if you make the same content as someone else who's big, they're just going to see you as a rip-off version of whoever that person is. So you have to try and find a unique way to make content, whatever it is, like whatever the topic.
And you think with those, you can apply those kind of same principles to brands in the sense that they just need to have something different and they need to be consistent with like their drops almost. Okay. So I think this is a good way to round off, like with all your experience, all your knowledge across journalism, YouTubing, just researching, like to you, what is the most important piece of advice that you could give to like anyone wanting to get into the fashion industry or like up and coming designers in particular?
One, designers are not the only job in fashion. A lot of people don't know, like there's so many jobs in fashion, like man, like from journalists, and a lot of them can make a lot of money, like journalists or photographers, videographers, stylists, hairstylists, hairdressers. Like, so, because everyone, when they think of fashion, they're like, oh, I want to be a designer, but there's so much more to it. And design might not actually be your thing. There might be something else that you like, whether it's even PR or something like that. So don't always feel like you're boxed in to being a designer. But also, if you're going to start any sort of fashion business, whether that's like what I do, which is have a magazine, or people that have brands, actually do your research before you start. I think a lot of people go into it blind. And I don't think they actually know they're going into it blind. I think they think they've done research, but they haven't. So I feel like it's also, if you can, find someone else who has a brand and try to get advice from them. I think that's probably the most important thing.
I think that's sick advice. You said something that reminded me to ask you something else. The magazine, again, Fashion Archive, congratulations on that. What made you decide to do a magazine, especially in a time where it's like print is obviously declining? Like, why didn't you just keep the magazine digital? Like, tell me everything.
Yeah, so first of all, the magazine is both. So it's digital and print. So that was like, all right. But then, so when I was first getting into fashion, I used to read magazines like ID magazine. And ID is like catered towards like underground scene, like music, culture, fashion, Dazed. But Dazed and Confused then, but now it's Dazed. There was like loads of magazines I used to read, and they really used to like, it was serious journalism. Like they'll go around London, find like up and coming creators and stuff. But now they're almost like watered down. I don't know if it's because of money and they're trying to make money, but they all talk about the same brands over and over again. It's like when Balenciaga has a show, everyone's talking about it to the point where no one talks about anything else. So I don't even buy those magazines anymore because it's not the same. Like when I used to read it, I'd actually be like, what? Who's this person in London? And then I'll actually learn something. I don't feel like I learn anything really reading those magazines again. So I was like, nah. So I wanted to make a magazine that reminded me of those times when people were actually talking about the up and coming things that were happening. So that's basically what my magazine is. It's like looking at up and coming creatives just around the world, like photographers, designers, stylists. I'm going to expand it into music in the next issue and stuff like that. So that is really why I made it.
That's sick. When's the next one coming out?
Next year. So it only comes out once a year.
Once a year? Okay, that's sick. Have you haven't set a date for next year though?
Nah.
Okay, cool. Still working on it.
Yeah.
Cool. Anyway, Ayo, bro, thank you so much, bro. Like, my head's spinning, bro. So much. Like, it's sick. Man's there watching your videos today, last week, whenever. And then now I've been able to ask you so many questions. I've been able to learn even more, bro. So thank you so much. I know our audience especially would really definitely value this episode. For those of you that may not know Ayo already, where can they find you and what can we expect from you?
Yeah, so YouTube is the Fashion Archive. Everything else is Fashion Roadman, like Instagram, Twitter. And what's next? I'm just making more videos. Now I work as a journalist for the business of fashion, so I write articles for them.
Sick.
Yeah, so you can also read my articles on that.
Yeah. Sick.
Yeah.
Hey. If you ever want to take in future episodes on the go, you can also find us on Apple Music and Spotify. When you get there, please, if you don't mind, leave us a 5-star review and whatnot. It would definitely help. And yeah, as I always say, keep it locked.